Wrestling and romance. Now, there's a volatile combination if I ever saw one. Liable to end in heartbreak or, you know, a powerbomb or something, on-screen wrestling romances rarely, if ever, turn out happily ever after. WWE are the worst offenders when it comes to this, of course, but some kayfabe couples don't even get the chance to see their union crumble so spectacularly. Whether they were scrapped after a first kiss or were simply only talked about in creative meetings, these would-be relationships had ice-cold water poured on them before they could get lukewarm, never mind red hot. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 cancelled WWE romances. Join us!
This video is brought to you by WrestleCrate. WrestleCrate is the original and best wrestling subscription box, packed with the best wrestling merch and shirts every single month, delivered straight to your door. T-shirts like this, or this, or this, or these! WrestleCrate partner with the biggest wrestling stars of the past and present to provide you exclusive merch that you will not find anywhere else. Like this, or this, or this, or this, or these. Sign up today at WrestleCrate.co.uk. The link is in the description below, and use code Cultaholic to double the goodies in your first WrestleCrate. Double! You'd be a stupid idiot not to.
Number 10. Trinity and Orlando Jordan. After signing with WWE in early 2006, stuntwoman extraordinaire and former TNA star Trinity was almost thrown right into a fire with a proposed controversial storyline involving Orlando Jordan. The former United States champion was somewhat directionless at this time, having split from JBL, but this new pitch promised to get people talking about him once again, if nothing else. It was said that Trinity would be brought to television as OJ's girlfriend, though there would be a twist. Playing off Jordan's well-known personal proclivities, he would also have a boyfriend at the same time, creating WWE's first bisexual love triangle. It was unknown just who the other male in this equation would be, but things never really got past the planning stages. It was reported in the Wrestling Observer that the boyfriend would be somebody flamboyant and over the top, which is sort of par for the course for the era, sadly. Later reports suggested that Orlando's real-life friend and traveling partner could have filled the role. In any event, the angle was dropped, as was Jordan not long after, while Trinity briefly appeared for the rebooted ECW brand before also being released. Number 9. Nia Jax and Enzo Amore. Enzo Amore liked to brag about being a certified G and a bona fide stud, but we sort of had to take his word for it, since it wasn't like he was regularly shown macking on chicks or anything. Well, he might not have done much of any full-on macking, but there were signs that Enzo could get himself a lady friend toward the end of 2017, when the Cruiserweight champion and Nia Jax started flirting back and forth in backstage segments. According to Amore, their relationship was supposed to continue to blossom, with the realest guy in the room using the irresistible force to help him win matches while he won her heart. It would then transpire that he was simply using Nia, who, lest we forget, is not like most girls, while cheating on her with her best friend, Alexa Bliss. Regrettably, Enzo was fired in murky circumstances while the storyline was starting to take shape, though it likely would have played out as he described when you consider that Nia and Bliss ended up feuding anyway, leading into WrestleMania. As it is, we can only imagine all the humping that Enzo and Nia might have done. Go on, imagine it. You're welcome. Number 8. AJ Lee and Dean Ambrose. Primo, Hornswoggle, John Cena, CM Punk, Kane, Dolph Ziggler, Daniel Bryan, former Divas champion AJ Lee managed to lock lips with quite a few of her male colleagues during her relatively short but certainly eventful main roster run. One romance that never made it in front of cameras was AJ's mooted dalliance with Dean Ambrose. According to Lee, this would have happened after her disastrous wedding to Dee Bry at Raw 1000. The original payoff would have seen the bearded wonder commit his ex-fiancée to a mental institution. While locked up, she would find and fall in love with the lunatic Fringe. They would then both show up as a new unhinged couple, with AJ being even crazier than before. This never got off the ground because AJ herself vehemently objected to it and its portrayal of mental illness. As someone who suffers from bipolar disorder, she could not in good conscience participate in something that would essentially ridicule her condition. Lee would be left off television for a time while writers came up with something for her that was, not totally offensive, while Ambrose had to wait a little longer for his call-up. It was worth the wait. Number 7, KAITLYN and CODY RHODES. Some of the best fiction is inspired by truth. So, when KAITLYN tweeted about her fondness for moustaches, WWE writer Kevin X sensed an opportunity to pen a storyline based around that fact. And who better for the chick buster to cozy up to than CODY RHODES, who at the time was sporting some damn fine lip hair. According to X, the romance would cause dissension between CODY and his tag partner Damien Sandow before, in a twist, KAITLYN would turn on the dashing one and side with the intellectual savior of the masses. Because big beards are more powerful than thin moustaches and all that. Another way it could have went would have been for Sandow to get his own gal, leading to a series of mixed tags. At the end of the day, the KAITLYN and CODY romance was nixed by Vince McMahon, who didn't understand why the grandson of a plumber would bother with someone like KAITLYN while the likes of the Bellas were knocking about. X tried to explain to his boss that KAITLYN was, very attractive, but his efforts fell on deaf ears. CODY and KAITLYN did share a few segments, but nothing ultimately came of it. Number 6, Ryan Shamrock and Ken Shamrock. Two people with the same unique surname finding love. Isn't that nice and unexpected? And oh god, they're brother and sister, aren't they? It was the Attitude Era, you see, so nothing was off limits, not even inter-family relations. Well, or so WWE thought, because the world's most dangerous man was certainly not on board with this sort of thing, even if it was for the purposes of so-called entertainment. Ken was steadfastly against any storyline that would imply that he was intimate with his kayfabe younger sister, because he had very real children to think about and didn't want them to have to answer any uncomfortable questions on the playground. Incidentally, the UFC star has cited being pitched this particular storyline as one of the reasons he decided to leave the company later in the year. Meanwhile, Alicia Webb, who played Ryan, was more than likely just happy to be along for the ride, since her WWE tenure was initially planned as a one-shot deal. In a tasty little bit of irony, Shamrock and Webb actually dated for a while IRL. Number 5, Katie Lee and Paul Burchill. Two people with the same unique surname finding love, and they're both British too. Isn't that nice and unexpected? And oh god, they're brother and sister again, aren't they? Almost a decade after the Shamrock affair was shot down and a couple of years removed from Vince McMahon playfully suggesting that his son Shane could be revealed as the father of his daughter Stephanie's firstborn child, it was time to go down this dark and disturbing road once more. After stalling as a British bruiser and then as a Jack Sparrow cosplay artist, Paul Burchill attempted to get his career back on track with the help of his younger sister, Katie Lee. When they were first introduced as a duo on Raw, Paul and Katie made reference to how much they liked to, make each other happy, with the Ripper vowing to ensure that whatever Katie wants, Katie gets, while she fondled his abs. Vomit, meat mouth. Fortunately, this angle was dropped after just a couple of weeks, and they went to being strictly siblings after. People tend to complain about WWE going PG in 2008, but if nothing else. Number 4, Sable and The Undertaker. As if it wasn't painfully obvious from watching WWE's Attitude Era product at the time, lead writer Vince Russo was absolutely besotted with Sable. He's admitted as much in the years since, noting that he was always trying to figure out ways to get her involved in storylines. One of his grand ideas in 1997 was to have her leave Mark Merrow and shack up with The Undertaker. It was felt at the time that the Dead Man's character could perhaps use some freshening up, with suggestions that his persona become more pronouncedly evil moving forward. With his gothic bride by his side, the two would, in theory, lord over WWE as the promotion's demonic power couple. Except Mark Calloway's real-life wife Sarah wasn't thrilled with the prospect of her hubby rubbing shoulders and God knows what else on camera with a sultry sexpot like Rena Merrow. I feel like there's an easy solution here. Like, why didn't the Phenom just, say, get his wife's name tattooed on his throat? That way he would never forget who was waiting for him at home, and he could always get it painfully lasered off in the unlikely event of divorce. Number 3. Crystal Marshall and Edge. That Edge gets about, doesn't he? Lita, Vicky Guerrero, Beth Phoenix, lock up your daughters, everyone. The rated R superstar is on the prowl. All three of those couplings had good things going for them and were memorable in their own way, but one member of the SmackDown roster in 2007 evidently didn't see the fuss about being paired with the ultimate opportunist. Crystal Marshall was penciled in for a run by the side of Edge, but turned it down because she wasn't comfortable with the more sexual side of things. The Canadian Lothario was a tonsil hockey veteran by this point. Part of this was because she was in a relationship with Bobby Lashley, who was a member of the Raw roster, though injured at the time. Aghast that Crystal would veto the idea of being the new Lita and feeling that she was being ungrateful by saying no to a golden opportunity, WWE opted to cut her entirely. Edge instead began his nefarious relationship with Vicky and never looked back, unless it was to check out some other woman he wanted to do the no pants dance with. Number 2. Angelina Love and Matt Hardy. Angelina Love went on to have a very successful career elsewhere, particularly as a member of the Beautiful People in TNA, but her sports entertainment dream almost ended when she was released from her WWE developmental contract in May of 2007. Prior to that, her best chance of a promotion to the main roster appeared to be as Matt Hardy's on-screen girlfriend. Love, who was then known as Angel Williams, was due to portray a planted fan in the audience who would get noticed by North Carolina's finest, with all due respect to Zach Galifianakis, before eventually becoming the elder Hardy's main squeeze. Angelina was raring to go when her segment was cut right as she was on her way to take her seat. Love was later told that Vince McMahon had hastily rewritten the whole show before the taping and that her big moment was one of the things that didn't make the grade. John Laurinaitis subsequently assured Love that her segment would be on next week's show, but, well, a promise from Johnny Ace is about as useful as chopsticks for soup, so, well, you know how that goes. Number 1. Trish Stratus and The Rock. The top male star in WWE and the top female star in WWE swapping spit on screen would be big news at any time, but during the Attitude Era, when those two stars were The Rock and Trish Stratus, good lord. The two were brought together by their mutual desire to take down the tyrannical Mr. McMahon and shared a backstage smooch before teaming up to take on the genetic jackhammer and Kurt Angle on the December 3rd, 2001 episode of Raw. Trish wanted to thank Rock for saving her from joining McMahon's special club on the previous episode of SmackDown and gave him a peck on the cheek. The Great One told her she was welcome by giving her a big taste of the most electrifying mouth in sports entertainment. Their alliance would continue on the next episode of SmackDown, when they conspired along with Jim Ross and Rikishi to humiliate their boss and put a temporary end to his special club. They had one more awkward interaction at Vengeance days later, where Big Dwayne insinuated that he would lay something down on Trish's candy ass later that night, before the whole thing was just forgotten about. According to Bruce Pritchard, Vince was wary of putting his top babyface in a romance angle out of fear that the fans would turn on him. Fans turning on The Rock? That'd never happen.